So to get started, what you're seeing on the screen is a file I use in training. I noticed in doing training, there was on the left side, there was a little funny thing happening. So I windowed in, I wanted to see what was going on the left side. I didn't see anything. So I went to Utility, Display Modes. I turned shading off. And then I could see window in, I could see a little shelf there. I didn't know what that shelf was for, but that explained why I was getting some differences in the toolpath. So then I went to Utility, Display Modes, turned shading back on and hit F12. And I thought, you know, it'd be cool to have that turn shade on and turn shade off on a hotkey. So that's what we're going to do here. The first thing I want to do is macro. I'll go to Macro, Record. I'm going to call it Shade Off, and I'm going to put it in the Program Data SmartCAM Common directory. I put these in the Common directory because at the time of update, if you were to update to the next version, it would overwrite the sysmcl directory, so you'd lose that. So that's why we're putting it in the Common directory. So we have it named. You can see there's a rectangle around the word macro. That means we're recording. So I'll go to Utility, Display Modes, turn shading off, Accept. Now, we have recorded right there one command in the macro. So I'm going to stop the macro here. Stop. And we'll go look at that macro. Go into Predator. Open. And it is in the Common directory. And there's the shade off. You can see the date, 1/19/1105. That's the one we just created. And there's the macro. So you can see the double slash is a comment character. So everything behind the double slash is commented. But then you can see filter use on, that was automatically put in there. But there's the display mode command that we recorded. Now, I'm only concerned with the variable that turns shading on and off. So I want to show you the macro command language reference. In the D's, there's my display mode. So what I'm looking for is something in these variables that refers to shading. So I'm just scrolling down until I find it. And you see right there, SS, surface shade. Values are 0 for off, 1 for on. So the variable I'm going to be looking for is SS. And you can see it right here. I want to get rid of all the other variables because I don't want to affect, when I run this macro, I don't want to affect all the other variables that are in display modes. So I'll just block all the rest of it. So all I have is SS equals 0. I'm going to do a file save. Now I also want one to turn shading back on. So I'll change that 0 to a 1, and I'm going to save this as shade on. And save. And I'm going to go into the area where we assign hotkeys to macros is the pmil.ini file or any application.ini. So I'm going to go into the ini file. And here's the pmil.ini. So I'm going to scroll down to the hotkeys. You can see the hotkeys here. Some of you may recognize F9 is view top, F10, view front. Any of these can be changed by the user. So I'm going to scroll down until I find one that's not being used. And there's control cursor up and control cursor down. So what I like to do is copy commands. That way I'm sure to get syntax correct. So I'm going to copy this up to Control Cursor Up, and I'll change the file name of the macro to shade on. And I'll copy that one, and I'll change the macro to off. So now my Control Cursor Up is shade on, and my Control Cursor Down is shade off. I do have to save this INI file. So File, Save. I'll minimize here. Now, anytime you make a change to an INI file, you have to drop out of the application and come back in so that that's when it reads the INI file. So I'm going to drop out and back in, and I'll read that file again. And now if I hit Control down arrow, Control up arrow. So what we just did there is we recorded a macro to access display modes and turn shading off. We read that macro into the editor. We got rid of all the other commands in display mode so that we wouldn't affect them when we use this macro. And then we changed the value from 0 to 1 and saved that as another macro, and thereby we had the two macros we needed. And then we went into the INI file. We found a hotkey combination that was not being used at the time. And then we saved the pmil.ini file, dropped out of SmartCAM, back in, read in the file, and it's working. I've used these hotkeys for many different things. I found in doing parts, I from time to time forgot to set clear where I wanted, so I had a macro that would set a clear and a prof top value on all tools, and I just hit Control P and it did it to the whole file. So anytime you see repetitive commands like this, you can attach them to a hotkey and make it a whole lot quicker.
The hotkey macro only saves about 10 to 15 seconds each time I use it. Is it really worth recording?
That's a good question. You're right. It does save just a little bit of time. Those do add up over time. And also, I've been a programmer for many years. I like just little time saver things like that. The one I also mentioned about setting prof top and clear values, that does save time. It's a safety deal also, where if I forgot to put a clear on one particular step, it may crash the machine. And by using that macro across the board, it set my clear and prof tops. So, and doing that individually to steps may take 10 minutes. So some of these are definitely time savers. You're right on the shade on, shade off, 5 to 10 seconds, but I like things like that.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and especially if you use that command 10 times a day or more over the course of a year, that's actually fairly significant time savings. He also asked a follow-up, do I need to re-record the macro to use it in my other SmartCAM applications?
You don't need to re-record a macro. For instance, if you had production mill and advanced turning, you would need to make the entry in the aturn.ini file where we added the shade on, shade off to the control arrow up and control arrow down. You would need to add that to any of the INI files for other applications, but that would be it. You do not have to re-record it.
Dave, can we use hotkey combos that are not listed in the INI files?
No, there is a finite number of hotkeys. However, I believe the number is somewhere around, it's over 100. And I would foresee people really using 5 to 10 to maybe 20 of these hotkeys. I don't think you'll exhaust the possibilities.
We will call it a webinar. Thank you again for attending today.